Tonight, after a dismal game against the Lightning, Leafs Nation braces for Game 2.
We've turned the page. I'm sure they've turned the page. I'm sure most of Leaf Nation has turned the page.
I know they're a good team. They sometimes just choke on the playoffs.
The Leafs say they're ready to bounce back from Tuesday's blowout loss. We're asking fans if they're feeling as resilient. And
Ontario Place has changed, yes it has, and it needs some care, but it doesn't need $650 million to do it.
Toronto councillors debating whether to part with a strip of land at Ontario Place so the province's redevelopment plans for the site can go ahead. Plus,
but once you start going up to 28, like we were having last week, that just really accelerates everything.
Peak bloom arrives early for Toronto's cherry blossom trees. Good evening. Okay, let's think of tonight as take 2 in the Leafs playoff run. The first game against Tampa Tuesday night in the past, and fans hope tonight will be a different story. Our Greg Ross joins us now live from Maple Leaf Square. Greg, the action getting underway in just over an hour. What is your reading on fans' faith tonight?
Well, Maribel, the theme here tonight is let's look forward and not back, because the fans here are ready to forget about what happened in Game 1 of this series on Tuesday night, where the Leafs simply just came out flat. They could never get back into the game. They ended up getting blown away by the Lightning in Game 1, 7-3. But the fans here tell me they are confident the Leafs will have a much better start in Game 2 tonight and swing that momentum back their way.
I'm not going to cry over a Game 1 loss. There's another 6 games to be played. So let's do it.
Great pass. Ross Colton scores.
It was an embarrassing loss for the Leafs in Game 1, but fans are chalking it up to nothing more than a bad night.
You're not giving up on this team.
No, never. Can't give up yet.
It is what it is. You can't do nothing about it. Let's just look forward and move ahead.
They're going to make the series a long, tough one. They'll win tonight.
There's Matthews, Marner, back to Matthews. Marner in front, scores.
Leafs players say they too are ready to turn the page.
Yeah, we've had good day of practice yesterday. Feel good about the group today. It's just about, that's the beauty of a playoff series, that you get the same team in Game 2 and you get to respond pretty quickly.
We expect to have a better start and just kind of ride through, just perform at a higher level, execute, be more intense. So, we'll look forward to that challenge tonight.
Ryan O'Reilly says he's embracing the pressure that the team is facing heading into Game 2.
Well, I think just, enjoying it. I think when the higher the stakes are, the things you have to, pay more attention to the detail. And, that's the fun thing about it. That's why playoff is, hockey is the way it is.
The Leafs will be without forward Michael Bunting, who was suspended for 3 games by the league for this elbow to the head of Eric Chernak in Game 1.
Well, I knew he was going to get something. That's what the league decided, so we'll press on.
And it's expected that Leafs rookie Matthew Knies will replace Bunting in the lineup for Game 2 tonight. Knies spent most of this season playing NCAA hockey for the University of Minnesota. He signed an entry-level contract with the Leafs earlier this month. He's only played in 3 games since signing that contract, 3 NHL games in his life. And now he's going to potentially start in his first ever playoff game. So you talk about pressure, you talk about nerves. Sheldon Keefe says there's no pressure on the kid tonight, but I think he's going to be very nervous, Maribel, going into his first ever NHL playoff game.
And the sea of fans just needs something to cheer about tonight. Greg, we'll check back in with you later. Thank you. Well, it is tax season, and according to a new report, there are some prominent people, corporations, even governments who owe the city big. The city says it is owed $39 million from its largest tax debtors. Property owners, including corporations and individuals, have been racking up debt in a time where the city desperately needs the money. Ali Chiasson has details on those who owe.
Toronto is owed $39 million in taxes. The list of debtors owing more than $500,000 includes Metrolinx, the People's Republic of China, and Woodbine Mall. Let's start with the first bill. Metrolinx owes approximately $511,000 on a building it purchased on Front Street back in 2021. A spokesperson for the Provincial Transit Agency said it was a clerical error at the Land Registry office.
We send multiple notices. If it's not big a deal, then I assume they'll pay.
Councillor James Pasternak is the chair of Toronto's government committee and says they're trying everything to get the money they're owed.
We try constructive engagement, talking with the property owner, working out a plan to repay back taxes and stay current with their current taxes. Worst comes to worst, we send a bailiff in.
That's what the city had to do with Woodbine Mall, which owed about $8.7 million in back taxes since 2017. So far, the city has managed to claw back about $900,000. Now, the $723,000 it's owed from China's government, that's complicated.
The problem there is they bought the building from Canada Christian College, which is an educational institution, but they never moved in. So I believe the tax exempt status fell into a hole in a way, and that the building is vacant. So that building does owe taxes, and they're saying they don't.
Because property taxes are a first priority lien, they are attached to the land and they never disappear. So even if the property is sold, those taxes that were owed by the previous owner transfer to the new owner.
Casey Brendan is the Director of Revenue Services with the city.
We are fairly confident that this money at some point will be recovered, and it's just a question of, at what point will we get paid? But it is not likely that this money is at risk of write-off or anything like that. We do expect to collect it.
Given the city's fiscal pressures, which include a budget gap of over $1 billion, one would hope that happens sooner than later. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
On the mayoral campaign trail, candidate Anna Bailau is promising that she'll do more to support food banks.
This is about more than policies and budgets. This is about dignity, and this is about quality of life. It is about making sure that when Toronto residents are most in need, they can have access to healthy food.
Her plan to tackle food insecurity includes investing an extra $2 million into a city program that supports nonprofits. Bailau says in the longer term, improving access to affordable housing will be key to helping Torontonians afford to feed their families. Humber River Black Creek councillor Anthony Peruzza, who's also running for the mayor's seat, was out in Midtown today talking about affordability. He says if elected, he won't raise property taxes or TTC fares for 3 years. Meanwhile, longtime newspaper columnist Anthony Fury says he plans to halt all new dedicated bike lanes in the city and remove ones at University Avenue along Hospital Row.
Syringes are everywhere, and I'm hearing over and over people going in their backyards, in their schoolyards, in the playgrounds, seeing needles and causing people to change their behavior because of that.
Former police chief and mayoralty candidate Mark Saunders talking about supervised drug injection sites. He wants to adopt a zero-tolerance policy toward needle disposal outside of the locations. He says currently people who live near these sites are afraid to visit neighborhood parks, adding they are, quote, littered with used needles. Saunders acknowledges the sites save lives, but says residents are shortchanged. It is day 2 of a strike by tens of thousands of federal public workers. Pickets are set up at more than 250 locations across the country. The Public Service Alliance of Canada union is demanding wage increases for members to keep pace with inflation, and they want new rules around remote work to be included in collective agreements. The strike is affecting a number of government services, from processing passports and tax returns to immigration applications. About 50,000 workers have been deemed essential and are still on the job. Contracts expired in 2021. The strike began on Wednesday after the union and the federal government failed to reach a deal. The redevelopment of Ontario Place has been thrust into the spotlight this week, and tonight, a City Hall committee is weighing what to do with a piece of waterfront land that is key to those plans. It's land the province will need to take over if the Ford government's vision for Ontario Place is to move ahead. Loretta Redekop has the latest.
A city committee is looking at one specific part of Ontario Place, needed by the province for its development plans. It's that strip of land and water going from east to west on the site. Well over 100 residents wrote to the city with their thoughts.
The City of Toronto should refrain from transferring the land ownership to the province. We thus urge you to not declare a surplus.
For many, the concern is with the overall plan for Ontario Place, including a large private spa, not just this piece of land.
The trees at Ontario Place will be full of nesting birds when they're chopped down. We have beavers returning to Ontario Place, for goodness sake. How many cities in the world have beavers coming back?
Plus, this week, the province confirmed it also plans to move the Science Centre to Ontario Place.
It's not surprising that the Premier was very short on details. No environmental assessments, no studies on water and sewer availability, no design, no parking, no traffic studies. It really wasn't much more than we're moving.
However, city staff recommend the land be declared surplus. Then a land swap could happen with the province, with the city receiving other lakefront land.
I absolutely think it would be wrong for Toronto City Council to say, oh, well, the Premier wants it, let's give up on the public interest, which is why I won't be supporting making this land surplus.
We're giving up land that has no real performing asset to it. You can't build on it. You can't expand it. The land that we're going to get, you could build a library, a community center, a school.
There are members of council and candidates out there that just want to fight with the province. Of all the things we need to worry about in the city, is it a water lot down at Ontario Place?
Opposition parties at Queen's Park gave their thoughts on this issue.
So at this point, you know, if I was the City of Toronto, I would hang on to that to make sure that Toronto's sliver of land there remains in public hands.
I mean, this government's already shown that they will override any municipal council decision that there is. So I have no confidence that they wouldn't just bulldoze right over the City of Toronto.
In the end, the committee decided to defer its decision, members saying they need more details on the province's plan. Just part of the debate over Ontario Place that continues. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
You saw a bit of it there, Ontario Place, the focus of some spirited debate at Queen's Park today. Opposition leader Marit Stiles taking issue with the plan to move the Science Centre to the Ontario Place grounds. Stiles pointing out how that relocation will affect the name of a new transit hub.
By the way, that subway stop, it's called Science Centre Station. I guess they're going to have to find a new name for it, Speaker.
Let me just get this straight. The Leader of the Opposition's main concern is that we might have to change the name of the brand new subway station. I will give the Leader of the Opposition a victory. We'll change the name of the subway stop for us.
The House Speaker, though, not providing any details as to what the new station name will be. The station is at the corner of Don Mills and Eglinton. It will eventually serve as the hub connecting the Eglinton Crosstown LRT to the Ontario line. Those fans call out outside at Maple Leaf Square. They need all the help they can get. Is the weather going to cooperate?
You know, I think we're going to be doing okay because there are some showers, showing up on the radar, but I expect those to stay to the north. So, hey, things looking pretty good. I know that easterly flow today, east kind of northeasterly off the lake, kept our temperatures on the cooler side, just a bit below normal, but not bad. At least we've got several double digits out there. Look at all those 10s to go around. But speaking of that lake breeze, Hamilton keeping things a little bit cooler there. So showing you those winds. Now, at times they've been a little bit gusty. The sustained winds, though, have been more around 15 to 20 kilometers an hour through much of the day. But it's just enough because of what's happening with the lakes at this time of year. They're still relatively cooler when we start to see some things warming up in the spring. Now, there are some of these showers. I know it looks like a lot here perhaps, but a lot of this is somewhat isolated or not reaching the ground. It's more significant to the north. Lots of active weather along the frontal boundary there. There were deadly tornadoes through yesterday along that front. There's all kinds of severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado watches again tonight. We're just going to be seeing periods of rain coming in, but it's going to take some time, and we get a break tomorrow morning, and that's the time to enjoy the mild air that's going to be moving in. 5 tonight. Tomorrow in the afternoon, Maribel, the rain will be pushing in our direction.
Okay, so just a mix of all of it.
Yeah, a lot of up and down like we're getting used to, right?
Yeah, we are. Thanks. Peel police are looking for a suspect in a stabbing last night they believe was sparked by road rage. It happened at 6:30 near Eglinton Avenue West and Ridgeway Drive in Mississauga. One person was found with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The suspect fled the scene on foot. He is believed to be in his 20s with long black curly hair and was last seen wearing a black sweater. Police say the victim and the suspect are not known to each other. Toronto police have arrested and charged a 12-year-old boy after a series of sexual assaults on walking trails in the East End last year. The boy, who cannot be named under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, has been charged with 2 counts of sexual assault linked to alleged offenses from September. Police say he cannot be charged for 5 earlier assaults because he was only 11 years old at the time. Police say they've been looking for the accused since last July. A woman running along the Gatineau Hydro Corridor Trail in Scarborough first reported being sexually assaulted by a teenage boy riding a bicycle. The boy will appear in court at a later date. A 6th person has been arrested in connection with an attack on missing woman Elnaz Hashtamiri.
On Friday, April 15th, the investigators were able to locate and arrest one of the individuals involved in this investigation. And Jaspreet Singh of Delta, British Columbia, was arrested in British Columbia and transported back to York Region, where he was put before the courts for the charge of aggravated assault and conspiracy to commit an indictable offense.
Police are still looking for a 7th person in connection with the investigation. That man is 23-year-old Sukhpreet Singh of Mississauga. The assault on Elnaz Hashtamiri took place in December of 2021 in Richmond Hill. She was beaten with a frying pan in an underground parking garage and hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. Hashtamiri was later abducted from a Wasaga Beach home in January of last year and remains missing. Her boyfriend, Mohammed Lilo, has been charged with kidnapping in connection with her disappearance. The federal industry minister is calling on all the country's major telecom companies to come to an agreement over wireless service in Toronto's subway system. His message comes days after Rogers announced it's buying the company that owns the wireless network on the subway. A local business law professor says this should force a deal.
To have all 3 big telcos working on this, it's going to accelerate the build time and save that many more lives and prevent violence.
BAI Communications won the contract to build and operate the TTC's public Wi-Fi and cellular network in 2012, but only Freedom Mobile signed on to provide coverage to its customers. Rogers says it will upgrade the existing network, which covers about a quarter of the subway's underground tunnels, and will build a 5G network for the entire system in around 2 years. Bell's CEO has called for a joint deal between his company and Rogers and TELUS. Well, we're getting a look inside a net zero home tonight. The Markham property is a first in the region and was designed to produce as much energy as it uses. Talia Ricci took a tour.
We are in Markham, Ontario. This is Minto and Metropia's net zero home at our Union Village community.
What exactly does a net zero home mean? Because you look around here, it looks like a nice, big, beautiful home, but what makes this different than the average home?
The thing about net zero homes are they produce as much energy as they use over the course of the year, and it really is that simple. Every other aspect about it will look visually the same. You will experience differences. It's more comfortable, quieter, warmer, better climate control inside, just generally a superior home to live in. It has rooftop solar panels that are generating as much energy over the course of the year as this home will use. All the lighting in the home is LED, LED being the most efficient way to illuminate your home. Part of what a net zero home is doing is reducing the amount of energy that's needed to limit the amount that you have to produce. One of the things you'll notice, in addition to the added insulation on the walls, is that the windows are triple glazed. Sitting by the window in the middle of the winter, you'd really notice that you don't get that draft.
Tell me what makes this basement different than a typical basement.
You're probably already noticing that it's much warmer than a typical basement. Two things really, all the added insulation, underfloor, in the walls, and then there's a multi-zone HVAC system. So your heating and cooling and ventilation air is broken down into 2 different zones. One of the other important things is the ERV, the energy recovery ventilator. You can think of that as like the lungs of your home. It takes out the energy from the exhaust air that's leaving the home and preheats the incoming air.
This home has been given a net zero certification by the Canadian Home Builders Association, but experts say there's still a lot of work to do when it comes to sustainable building and making homes like this attainable for the average person.
It's at the edge of the urban boundary, so it's turning lands that used to be natural land into subdivision, which is inherently unsustainable, but also on the types of buildings being built. Right? There's really no way to make big single-family homes sustainable.
Some people are willing to pay a premium, but most people don't have that option. You know, their housing budget, they're right at the top of what they can afford already. It's really crucial that we develop these homes in ways that are affordable. And that takes time.
What are your thoughts on what the future of sustainable homes might look like?
I don't think there's any question that there will be more net zero homes. I think it's just a matter of time as people become more familiar with what net zero means, what net zero ready means, and the impact that their housing choices have on climate change.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Markham.
Welcome back. We have hit peak bloom on the cherry blossoms at High Park. The trees blooming early this year thanks to a stretch of warm weather last week. Peak bloom is when more than 70% of the blossoms are open. High Park will be closed to cars during peak bloom, but the city is expecting tens of thousands of people to descend on the park in the coming days to catch a glimpse. We sent our Ryan Patrick Jones to the park to take it all in.
There's lots of people here today. Hey, what are they all doing?
Taking pictures.
Taking pictures of what?
We
Just wondering, what brings you here to the park today?
Just look at the beautiful cherry blossom.
And what do you think about them?
They're gorgeous.
Splendid, wonderful. I'm excited to be here now that they're blooming. I'm not from here, so I'm feeling lucky.
What brings you here today?
To see her.
So is she your friend, or?
Yeah. She's leaving soon. I'm from Japan, and also I want to see some cherry blossom because when I go back to Japan, it's a little bit late to see.
We can chat about things. Cherry blossoms each year is a very, very popular time in Toronto, and we see here in High Park tens of thousands of people, and it's always a very busy and challenging time for people to get into the park. Don't pluck the branches or climb trees or pull on the branches for your selfies. We ask that you keep your furry friend on a leash. And, if you're coming to have lunch in the park, we ask that you try to pack a litterless lunch or pack out what you bring into the park with you. So we're currently in what's called stage 5, and stage 5 is puffy whites. So the buds have emerged far enough now that the white petals are visible and they're just ready to burst out into blossoms where you can see those 5 white petals and the beautiful pink center of the bloom. And so we reached stage 5 rather quickly this year. We had some record-breaking temperatures over the last few weeks that really brought the bloom process forward. So we went from stage 2 to stage 5 in 4 days, where typically we would go from stage 2 to stage 5 in 7 to 11 days.
So these are white, and I thought the cherry blossoms were pink.
Yeah, so there are varieties in High Park that are pink, but the majority of the cherry blossoms here in High Park are white. As the buds come out, you'll see that they are a little bit pink on the outside, and then as the petals emerge, the petals are white. And in the very center of the flower, it still has that pink tinge, and that's what we get to see is this beautiful canvas of white flowers with pink centers, normally contrasted against the beautiful green of the landscape in High Park, or on a brilliantly sunny day, a beautiful bright blue sky.
What do you think attracts people so much about these trees?
I think it's just the beauty and symbolism behind them. In terms of the Sakura cherry blossom, they're one of the first flowers to bloom in the spring, so I've always considered them to be like the spring ambassador. So once we see the cherry blossoms bloom, then we know that's sort of the official term that winter's over, spring is now finally here, and we can get to enjoy it.
What is it about them that you find so, that draws you to them?
The fact that, we only get a couple days or weeks out of the year that we get to see them, so it's special. It just looks very pretty, like very magical.
It's a sign of spring, and the colors are so pretty with the green and the pond in the background. And yeah, it's just a beautiful place to come in the city.
This is a live shot of a press conference by Peel Police. We are learning tonight about a massive gold heist in our backyard. So this is Pearson International Airport, where that press conference is happening right now. Let's listen.
At the airport in the early evening. As per normal procedure, the aircraft was unloaded and cargo was transported from the aircraft to a holding cargo facility. Once this cargo was offloaded at a holding facility, subsequent to its arrival, this high-value container was removed by illegal means from the holding facility. This cargo was reported missing to the Peel Regional Police a short time later. An investigation has commenced. What I can say is that the container contained a high-value shipment. It did contain gold, but was not exclusive to gold and contained other items of monetary value. The total worth estimated at this time in our investigation for the property is estimated at just over $20 million. This remains an ongoing investigation led by the Peel Regional Police. It is being investigated by the Criminal Investigation Bureau at the Airport Division. This division and the command of the Airport Division has an absolutely wonderful working relationship with the RCMP, but at this time, this remains a Peel Regional Police investigation. Having said that, our relationship is so good with the RCMP that I have utmost confidence that if they could help us in this investigation, it can be a quick call, and I feel confident that they will help us in this investigation. But at this moment, it is a Peel Regional Police theft investigation. We are unable to provide specifics to this investigation because we're 3 days in. And our goal right now is to solve this theft. So as you can appreciate, a lot of the intimate details I can't provide because our team is assembled, they are working diligently on this case, and we want to solve it. So a lot of the finer details I'm just not able to provide because I want to solve this. So I appreciate everybody coming here today, but what I can say is we feel this to be an isolated incident. Therefore, for the traveling public that are concerned about coming and flying out, that they should have no concern. We do not consider this a public safety matter, and that everybody can feel assured that operations are running smoothly and there should be no concern, and this is an isolated incident and no concerns for travel safety. No disruptions whatsoever to operations here. We have a great relationship with all stakeholders. We will continue this investigation, do our best. I'm subject to a few questions here.
Where did the aircraft come from?
I won't release that at this time, thank you, just because I want to try and solve this case and the integrity of it.
Can you tell us who you believe might be responsible for organized crime with the plants inside the airport? What can you tell us in terms of details?
We're 3 days in, so our investigators have got their eyes open to all avenues. So we really don't want to make an error and sort of focus on one particular area. We're kind of keeping a broad outlook on it. So we're looking at all angles on how this item was stolen. So I don't really have a lot of details on how it was stolen to provide or any suspect or any type of information.
I think you mentioned this, but was it taken from a plane or from a holding area?
Holding cargo facility.
And when you say gold and other valuables, I know you've been into the specifics. Can you give us an idea of size? Because it's very abstract, $20 million. Like, was the container the size of a suitcase? I mean, any rough estimates on that?
I would describe it sort of similar to like a regular sort of aircraft container.
So how big would that be?
What's that?
How big would that be? I can't imagine a regular aircraft container would that be.
I'm going to guess here a little bit, probably square foot, 5-6 feet.
So they would have had to transport this with a machinery, or they couldn't carry it up?
Possibly. I don't know yet. Can't say that yet.
How much did it weigh? You're hearing.
That's something I just want to not say at this time, just as the investigation's evolving. Just over 20 million. Yeah.
How much did this weigh? We were hearing the published reports, 3,600 pounds. Can you just talk about how much this container would have weighed?
Yeah, I'm not going to give out the specifics of the weight at this time.
Can you tell us, do you have any suspect information at all that you at least have that you're looking at? Do surveillance video, what do you have?
No, we're 3 days in this investigation, so we've put our best team forward on this, and we're getting cooperation from all agencies involved here at the airport, and it's a very detailed and onerous investigation. So we're just kind of day 3 here, so we're looking at everything. So we're still early for that.
How common a crime would this be at the airport?
I would suggest this is an isolated incident. This is very rare.
So in that sense, do you get the sense that this was planned, that there were professionals involved in stealing something to be able to identify something of this value? I imagine it looked like a lot of the other things there. Didn't say like gold on it.
Well, we'll look at all avenues, but I mean, for me to come on the record and say it's professional this time would be really, really early for me, and I'd be hesitant to say such thing. But we'll look at it all, right? But how this went missing certainly it piques our interest, and we'll try and dig into it. But for sure, right? But to say it's professional this time, a little early for me to say.
Public reports indicate that there are. We have been watching a press conference live at Pearson Airport by Peel Regional Police talking about gold being stolen, a container of it, along with some property inside that container being stolen out of there. The total value, Peel Police saying, of the contents of that container, just over $20 million. The investigation into this heist is only 3 days old, is what we're hearing from the inspector from Peel Regional Police. A couple of important points that he made, though, is that he believes this is an isolated incident and that there is no concern for public safety and that there has been no disruption to operations at the airport. This is something that we will continue to follow and bring updates as they become available. Moving on to other news, Canada's environment watchdog released 5 reports today. They show a need for a significant shift in approach if Ottawa wants to meet its own climate and biodiversity targets. David Thurton reports.
What we're going to do is plant 2 billion trees over the next decade.
A big ticket campaign promise from the Liberals more than 3 years ago before the pandemic, which Canada's environment watchdog says isn't off to a great start.
They are not on track, and we provide recommendations that would allow them to get back on track to meet 2 billion trees by 2031.
As it stands, the government missed all of its planting targets so far, particularly last year. 60 million trees were supposed to go into the ground, but it's estimated only 16 million will make it.
The first year they made it, just about, close enough. Second year, not even close.
These delays could get even worse if the government doesn't find enough partners to help them out.
There are not that many federal lands to plant a lot of trees. They need partnerships with provinces, territories, Indigenous communities, municipalities, private sector to deliver on this.
Missing planting targets is not the only way the government is missing the mark.
They are overestimating the amount of emissions that are going to be sequestered as a result of the program as well.
Trees are natural carbon sinks, but they need time to grow and won't start reducing carbon emissions in 2030 as initially promised.
The core benefits of the program aren't going to be realized until after 2050. That's when the trees will be old enough that they'll start to sequester a reasonable amount of carbon.
Government accepts it cannot count on all those trees to meet Canada's climate targets.
We're not banking on the tree planting program to reduce emissions. We know it will, but the accountability is so complex that we're keeping it separate.
Trees weren't the only focus of the Environment Commissioner. His reports also found that emission regulations for cars and some trucks didn't meet their targets. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
Meanwhile, Ottawa is earmarking billions of dollars in subsidies for a plant that will manufacture batteries for electric cars. The facility is to be built by Volkswagen in southwestern Ontario. Karina Roman has that story.
Well, the official announcement is tomorrow. We have the numbers today. The federal government has agreed to production subsidies of between $8 and $13 billion over 10 years. And the reason there's a range is because it depends on how many batteries are produced. So those subsidies are per battery on an annual basis. The deal also includes $700 million grant toward the factory's building, basically the capital cost. It's predicted to cost about $7 billion to build, so this is about 10% of the cost of that. This factory is going to be in St. Thomas, Ontario. It's meant to be the size of like 350 football fields. So this is a very, very big plant. And sources tell CBC that the factory could amount to 10% of the electric vehicle batteries made in all of North America.
It's a type of economy that we want to build. And there's a big franchise fee when you're in the major leagues. You know, it's not to be flippant about it, but you know, this is the second biggest automaker in the world, and you want them to make your batteries here. It's not going to come for free.
Now, the government says the spin-off economic benefits is what this is really about, and that it will more than offset these corporate subsidies.
As a government, we are absolutely determined that Canada is going to get its fair share of that new, clean industrial economy. It means ensuring that Canada, which is a major car-producing country today, continues to be a car-producing country as we move to electric vehicles. And that's why the VW investment is so important.
In fact, they predict about a $200 billion over 30-year spin-off in terms of economic benefits, whether we're talking about the supply chain growing in terms of manufacturing or jobs. This is what the government says it takes to attract one of the largest automakers in the world.
Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
The funeral was held today for an Alberta RCMP officer who died on duty last week. Constable Harvinder Singh Dhami was killed in an accident on his way to assist fellow officers. Hundreds of officers marched in the procession. Dhami was a member of the Strathcona County Detachment east of Edmonton. Last Monday, he lost control of his vehicle and hit a concrete barrier. He had served with the RCMP for 4 years. Constable Dhami was 32. So I feel like the weather is just a typically spring kind of weather.
Yeah, that's the best way, I think, Maribel, to describe it. What we're going through, all these ups and downs that we're seeing. You know, there's a warm front kind of knocking on the door of the international border here, trying to make its way in. I mean, you see Windsor's at 18, but the winds have still been more southeasterly than southerly, so they could have pushed into the 20s had it really made its way in, but milder, just not getting there. We're starting to see that warmer air push in. Double digits, though, we're seeing around, except for, of course, Hamilton. Again, that lake influence with those winds coming in from the lakeshore. Now, to the north of us, some heavier rains and thunderstorms. You see all the lightning strikes here. A few little isolated showers. I mean, it's possible kind of a sprinkle goes through. I certainly think for the city, we stay dry. Maple Leaf Square staying dry as well. But just going in for a closer look, there are definitely some heavy rains here. You see those lightning strikes, that influence, even of Georgian Bay, a big enough water body that we see those kind of weakening as they're coming across and moving over towards Parry Sound and Huntsville and through that region. So taking you back to what's happening here over the next 24 hours, we get a breather for the early part of the day tomorrow. I mean that we'll have dry conditions. So some sunshine, say partly cloudy in the morning. Through the lunch hour, you might be able to be outside for your lunch on a patio, but then into the later afternoon and evening, the rain begins, and we will have waves of rain as we go through the latter part of tomorrow and overnight and then into Saturday. And all told, this is when you put all those waves together, and that's when we're looking at potentially seeing 15 to maybe even 30 millimeters of rain coming our way. Now, with the temperatures, it does get warmer tomorrow, but remember, you want to get there where it's dry but warming up. And then after that, we're going to see kind of a cool spell with temperatures below seasonal as we go into next week, Maribel.
Is the rain going to help the flowers, maybe? That's how I'll look at it?
There you go.
Okay.
See? Yeah. And the grass and pollen and those with allergies. No,
Yeah,
I'm just
okay.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
We'll stop
it.
it for
Actually,
now.
the rain takes the pollen down, so okay.
Good save, Colette.
Yeah.
Thanks. As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX dropped 50 points, the Dow fell 110, and the dollar traded down to 74.24 cents US. We'll be right back. SpaceX launched a new rocket today for a crucial test flight, but it blew up 4 minutes after liftoff and crashed into the Gulf of Mexico. Elon Musk says his space company learned a lot from what happened today, but as Nicole Mortellero reports, a lot is riding on the rocket's future success.
SpaceX said that excitement was guaranteed ahead of its fully stacked launch of its massive Starship rocket, and, well, they were right. The launch seemed to go off without a hitch, but shortly after, around 2.5 minutes into the flight, the rocket appeared to flip. And now it was unclear as to whether or not it was part of this launch, because we've never seen a launch like this before. However, it continued to somersault and it exploded. But SpaceX doesn't see this as a failure. It actually sees this as a success, which, if you watched the launch, you might have noted there is a lot of cheering going on.
Starship just experienced what we call a rapid unscheduled disassembly, or a RUD, during ascent. But now this was a development test. This is the first test flight of Starship, and the goal was to gather the data and, as we said, clear the pad and get ready to go again.
Now, it's important to remember that SpaceX had a lot of failures of its rocket, which is now Falcon 9, before it was a success. In fact, Musk sees these as learning experiences. He did tweet and congratulate the SpaceX team for what he said a successful launch, and he said there's more to learn ahead of another launch, he says, within a few months. However, Musk has been very gracious with his timelines in the past. But the fact is, he actually is under pressure to get it done somewhat quickly, because this version of this rocket will be used as part of NASA's Artemis 3 mission, which will once again see astronauts on the surface of the moon, and that is scheduled for 2025. Nicole Mortellero, CBC News, Toronto.
A rare solar eclipse briefly plunged parts of Earth into midday darkness today.
I know, I'm not looking at glasses.
Oh, wow, that is cool. This remote northwestern town in Australia is one of the few places that caught the minute-long celestial event. Thousands drove and even flew in to see the hybrid eclipse. It's where the curve of our planet determines what kind of eclipse you get. As the moon blocks the sun, those in the center of the shadow's path see a total eclipse. But if you're near the fringes of it, the moon appears smaller with a ring of fire around it. A hybrid eclipse only happens a few times in a century. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Okay, the Leafs are just minutes from Game 2 of the playoffs against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Our boys in blue trying to stop the bleeding and even this series at 1 apiece. So let's go right back to Greg Ross, who's at Maple Leaf Square tonight. Greg, I asked how the nerves were for fans earlier, but now the question is, are we feeling confident about a win in Game 2?
I think there's a lot of confidence here, Maribel, right now in Maple Leaf Square. I'll tell you what, the energy is back. We watched the energy out of Scotiabank Arena just get swept away after that first goal, a minute 18 into Game 1. Well, the energy is back. You can see the fans here very excited about this Game 2, hoping that the Leafs come out with a much better start, a much better performance in this game. We've got these two young ladies here. They've calculated the amount of days. How did you guys calculate this again?
A lot of research.
A lot of research. Google. They told me they used Google to calculate how many days it's been since the Leafs won a Stanley Cup. And I asked you guys to calculate how many days it's been since the last time they won a playoff series.
6,939 days.
They literally just did that on Google like minutes ago, and they were able to calculate that by determining the last time they won a series was exactly April 20th, 2004, beating the Ottawa Senators, which is exactly 19 years to the day the Leafs won their last series. Maybe that'll be a good omen for them as they go into this Game 2 tonight, Maribel. It is the Leafs. It is the Lightning in Game 2. The Leafs looking to bounce back, and I can tell you, the fans have certainly bounced back. We'll see if the players can follow suit.
If they could bring that energy and confidence inside, Greg, I'm sure that'll be a big help. Thank you. Listen, we're all doing our part, Colette.
Yeah, look at us.
This is actually.
We didn't even talk about this.
We didn't. We think, because we're smart people. This is actually Phil, our floor director's scarf. He's fully decked out. jersey, ball cap, everything. So, I mean, we're doing all we can.
I know. I love it. I've got a stash of hats over here, too. Everything. I decided to go with this because this is what I'll be wearing tonight. Yeah, go Leafs, go. Here we are. Let's check out what's happening with our forecast. So overnight tonight, we will see a low of 6 degrees here. And for the early part of the day tomorrow, so kind of the first half, we will have dry conditions. It will be milder. Enjoy it. Get out there if you can. Even could be eating your lunch outdoors. But then into the afternoon and evening, we get into rain, possibly an embedded thunderstorm, but you'll notice the mild temperature up to 19, 20 degrees in terms of what we'll be seeing. And the wind's getting a little bit breezier from the west for the latter part of the day. Now, after that, I mean, we're going to be dealing with waves of rain even Friday night and into Saturday. Then the cold front, once it passes, will do some clearing out. Still a slim chance on Sunday of some showers, but you'll notice some slightly cooler temperatures as we do go into next week, Maribel.
Okay, Colette, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. We're all decked out in blue and white. Thank you for joining us. We're going to see you back here tomorrow at 6, but we're going to leave you tonight with a live shot of Maple Leaf Square. Check out those fans cheering on our Leafs heading into Game 2 against Tampa Bay, hoping they can turn this series around. Puck drop, stand by, just a